In this episode of Basic Hale, we explain why hate is a disease, because it diminishes the health and life of a person who hates another person. At the end of this episode, we ask you to affirm a New Year resolution with us for a world without hate. The concept of hate is a feeling of extreme aversion or hostility toward a person, a place, or a thing. Hate would cause you to speak hatefully and act violently towards other people with the intention to do harm. There are many emotions that can lead to violence. Emotions such as fear, jealousy, and envy. But hate is arguably the number one factor responsible for the highest number of killings of humans by humans since recorded history began. It is also the number one reason for discrimination and marginalization. The interesting fact is that humans are not inherently hateful beings. It is very important to understand this before we can see hate as a disease. A disease presupposes that it is something that happens in the course of life. Diseases happen by a multifactorial process. According to scientific literature, the three common categories of risk factors for developing any disease are genetics, environmental exposure, and lifestyle. At Basic Hale, we like to think that genetics has negligible contribution to the development of hateful feelings towards other people, if at all. The other two factors, however, contribute a lot. This is why we propose that the World Health Organization should include hate in the International Classification of Diseases. The environment, for example, consists of politicians, the social media, the teaching curricula in our schools, news media, religion, and many other contributors to our life experiences. Before a person or a group of people can be infected by hate, they must first be aligned to a certain ideology or narrative that is opposite to the ideology or narrative of another person or another group of people. These ideologies are the things that we say and do to each other. We develop hate gradually over time, depending on what we constantly hear or the things that we constantly see. It is like eating junk food for some time before developing diabetes, or like smoking for some years before developing cancer. The sad fact is that you could develop full-blown hate in less than one day. It is that infectious and virulent. Here is an anecdote to help our understanding. I often go walking on Sandymount Beach in Dublin, Ireland. Many times a dog would come to sniff my legs. And because I am not a dog person, I will always try to avoid being sniffed. But sometimes the dog may be so excited by the sight of my pretty legs that it may not take no for an answer and would persist in its efforts to sniff my legs, while I also persist in showing the dog to go away. On several occasions, the dog owner would speak hatefully and violently at me for the way that I have treated their dog. The background ideology of these dog owners is that they believe that everyone should love their dog as much as they do. Fortunately for me, the violence has never gone beyond words. Here is another anecdote that has been normalized and is no longer featured in the news. Nigeria is the largest African country by population. Almost every year, there is a conflict in the north where the predominantly Muslim population hunt down and kill the Christian minority. To a lesser extent, the opposite happens in the south, where the predominantly Christian population hunt down and kill the Muslim minority. Keep in mind that there are no significant genetic differences between these two groups of people. Differences only exist in the languages that they speak and in their religious beliefs. It is the same fundamental differences in their collective narrative and ideology that made the Hutus of Rwanda kill almost 1 million of their cousins who identified themselves as Tutsis in 1994. Note again that there are no genetic differences between these two groups of people. The same mechanism of creating hate and unleashing it on people who are considered to have a different narrative or ideology has been observed throughout history. This happened in the Crusades, perpetrated by the Catholic Church, and more recently, the cause of the Black Lives Matter movement. Hate is also the reason for the attacks on people of Asian origin because some people thought that they are the source of COVID-19. Even the current state of affairs between the United Kingdom and the European Union was based on hate. These are just a few famous instances of hate, but if you look closely in your families, your schools, and workplaces, it is very easy to identify the cause of hate and how many people have been infected by it. There will always be differences of ideologies and differences in lived experiences and the narratives that people identify with. At Basic Hale, we struggle with the ominous fear that hate will always be among us because of this existential nature of the cause of hate. To clarify, the ideology that you believe in gives you your identity, and your sense of identity is based on your life experiences. So, there is something fundamentally good in ideologies and the collective narrative of any group of people because they provide a sense of belonging and they offer protection by the people who have the same ideology and narrative. Unfortunately, a sense of identity creates hate when people of a certain ideology or narrative come to believe that their ideology or narrative is somehow superior to the ideology and narrative of another group of people. In the words of Jordan Peterson, if you were a German during the Second World War, there is a very high probability that you will also be a Nazi because that was the predominant ideology of the people of Germany at that time. At Basic Hale, we think that a healthy way to act out our individual or collective identity is to accept the fact that what we believe in is important to us, but it may not be important to other people. More importantly, we should have an attitude of trying to understand the ideology of other people so that we can peacefully coexist with people whose identity are different from ours. There is no doubt that those who are hated suffer a lot if they also happen to be the minority. Their suffering is very visible to society, and history is awash with tales of what happened during the Holocaust and more recently in Bosnia-Herzegovina. A more important question then is, do the haters go scot-free? Do they go on with their lives in states of complete physical, social, and mental well-being? The answer to these questions is an emphatic no. There are some studies that prove two important facts. One, those who perpetrate hate also tend to increase in their resolve to continue to commit hateful acts because, in most cases, they go unpunished and society is either indifferent to their actions or finds a way to justify them. This indifference or justification by society leads to a critical mass of hate in the community, which makes the environment unsafe for everyone, including the initial offender. The indifference of society also leads to the second fact, proven by research. Hate is a vicious cycle, and vicious cycles are difficult to get out of. This is because hates create more hate in a way that mathematicians call exponential progression. For example, if you witnessed a hate crime and did nothing, you are likely to commit a hate crime yourself in the very near future. So you can understand why you must never think of yourself as someone incapable of committing hate crimes. Instead, do not be indifferent to hate. Speak out peacefully against it, while at the same time watching yourself to make sure that you do not become hateful yourself. If you are still watching this video up to this moment, you must be interested in a world without hate. So we invite you to make this resolution with us. In this coming year, we will not hate. Instead, we will try to understand.
In this coming year, we will not hate. Instead, we will try to understand.